you give us an update on this humanitarian aid situation with this Swiss-based weirdo Marine who was running this thing connected to the Israelis, and now it's even too much for him apparently, and nothing apparently is getting in.
Yeah, I mean, let's remember that there is a decades-long program that was in place and administered by the United Nations that was the primary distributor of aid to Palestinians that have been displaced or forcibly removed from their land or their homes, going back to the origins of the Nakba, the catastrophe that followed the imposition of an apartheid colonial state on Palestinian land. And much of that is coordinated by UNRWA. And Israel has been waging its own war to try to destroy UNRWA, not just because Israel wants to control the amount of calories that Palestinians in Gaza are able to take into their bodies, but also because UNRWA represents the right of return of the Palestinian people. And so the United States and Israel in recent months, the Trump administration and Netanyahu, came up with an idea that I think was, originally born of, out of Netanyahu's thought process on his war of annihilation against the Palestinians, where they would essentially dismantle UNRWA's presence in Palestine and create a semi-non-governmental organization called the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation that's registered in Switzerland and has ties, some of its personnel have ties to the CIA in terms of the private security that's being attached to it. So basically what it is that Israel is going to be quote unquote securing zones where this so-called non-governmental organization is going to distribute really small boxes. We've now started to see the images coming out of Gaza, really small boxes that have a couple of bags of pasta, some lentils, and some other items in them. And people have to walk, in some cases, 15 or 20 kilometers to go and get this aid. And there's already images of people lined up, and it was haphazardly put together. And as we were preparing to come on today, Iyad Amawi, who is from the Gaza relief committees, texted me and with an urgent appeal saying that a Palestinian man who actually was among the first to arrive to try to get a box of aid this morning was kidnapped by Israeli forces when he went to go and get the aid. This is one of the nightmare scenarios that Palestinians and others have been warning about, that Israel would try to use the distribution of aid to lure people from central and northern Gaza into the south of Gaza, and then either try to force them to stay in the area or to use it as a mechanism to snatch more Palestinians. And I just want to read you briefly what his family says happens at the Muraj Crossing Aid Distribution Center. He said, quote, this is a statement from this man's family. "To our shock, he called us under threat from Israeli intelligence officers demanding information about one of our relatives with whom we've had no contact since the beginning of the war. When we were unable to provide the information the army requested, communication was cut off, and we were later informed that he was transferred to a detention center. He's now considered missing." Iyad gave us a statement this morning in general about how, and he's one of the people on the Gaza relief committees helping to coordinate the work of NGOs that have long worked inside of Gaza. And I think it's worth just sharing this with people, his description of what is happening right now. He said, "What's happening with the American organization operating under the protection of the Israeli military is the following. They announced the existence of a warehouse in the Tel al-Satan area west of Rafah city. Dozens of civilians voluntarily headed there without any organized distribution system to receive a food parcel, as you may have seen in some of the circulated photos. The process does not follow any regulated distribution mechanism like those previously managed by UN agencies. It's merely a demonstration, a way to claim that aid distribution has resumed. The minimum distance a person must walk to receive a food parcel that barely lasts 2 days is more than 15 kilometers. There's no public transportation. Only basic local tools like donkey-drawn carts can sometimes reach the area. A humanitarian appeal, which we have verified, was issued by a family whose relative was detained during the distribution due to the military's presence nearby. The situation constitutes humiliation and degradation of the Palestinian citizen. The current procedures," Iyad writes, "resemble a ghetto, with people forced to enter through detour routes to receive aid in a degrading manner, and again with no system in place. This is ineffective and fails to reach large segments of the population. We're talking about tens of thousands across the Gaza Strip who will not be able to access these aid points. A single distribution location in Rafah, in the heart of a military incursion zone, poses significant danger and threat. It will not be effective unless aid distribution is returned to a system managed by UN-affiliated institutions, ensuring neutrality, fairness, and inclusivity in the process. That statement just released this morning by one of the main officials in Gaza who's been responsible for coordinating this aid. And we've seen condemnations of this program coming from the highest levels of the United Nations. Now you have even countries that have been major facilitators of Israel's genocide. I'm thinking, of the European countries recently, the United Kingdom, France, but also this week Germany. Even though Germany has been just bloodthirsty genocidal in support of Israel, the incoming or the new chancellor, Friedrich Merz, said this week, well, it seems like in recent days things have gotten really bad and we don't see a justification to be doing this in the name of fighting Hamas. So when you even are starting to lose Germany, which has been as enthusiastic as the United States in adopting Israel's lie-filled narrative to justify a war of annihilation, then it's clear how startling and horrifying the situation has become. So, you and I have talked about this, Ryan, before, about this aid program, and I likened it to essentially setting a trap. The Israelis dehumanize Palestinians. They talk about them as animals, and it's essentially saying, we're going to put bait inside of this cage. When you go into it, we're going to shut it, and we're either going to kill you inside of there, or we're going to implement what Netanyahu calls Trump's plan, which is we're going to remove you entirely from your land and send you somewhere else, whether it's Libya or Somaliland or elsewhere. So very dire situation. There are thousands of Palestinian children at risk of starvation, and that is spreading rapidly by the hour if you talk to doctors and health officials on the ground.
It sounds like the situation that you're describing with the kidnapped Palestinian man requires a sophisticated and premeditated plan. So, in other words, like a man arrived at this distribution center. They must have asked for ID. So they identify who the man is, punch his name into whatever laptop they have there. Something pops up that it sounds like, reading between the lines here from the conversation, that there's somebody in a family connected to him or something who Israel has some suspicions about. Not that they have suspicions about him, not that they have suspicions about anybody even close to him, but there's some multiple degrees separation to somebody they suspect. Let's say, I would assume a fighter, but could be something else. And so then they detain him, threaten him to try to leverage, blackmail, extort the family to give information about this person who they say they haven't seen since the very beginning of this conflict. They fail at that, and they just chain him and haul him off. Like that has to be, as far as I understand it, a top-down system. Like this could not be just pulled off by guards just operating ad hoc.
No, I mean, I think that's, we only know the facts that I presented,
right.
But just, based on what we know about Israel's operating procedures, they have extensive biographical information about every Palestinian. They have massive repositories filled with data. They are listening in on, or at a minimum, recording for future listening, every form of communication in and out of Gaza, the occupied West Bank, occupied East Jerusalem. And one of the things that we learned early on from leaked draft documents about this program was that they were going to be using biometric data scanning, that they were going to be doing not just quote unquote security vetting, but also political vetting. So I would imagine that Israel is also viewing this as an intelligence gathering operation, akin to also how the United States operated in the post 9/11 environment, where you would find someone whose data trail is 2 or 3 hops away from someone that you suspect might be connected to this organization, and you snatch that person. And both the United States and Israel have engaged in torture of people that have no direct connection whatsoever to the actual groups that they're supposedly trying to destroy or go to war against, but the mere fact that there's some data linking them to it. So it's totally plausible that they snatched this guy, that his data was connected to someone else's data, was connected to someone else's data in their family, and they're going to hold him and interrogate him and Maybe he makes it out, maybe he doesn't. Maybe he's tortured, maybe he's put into administrative detention. Maybe they're going to start taking more people to exchange in captive exchange deals going forward in this ceasefire process. But even mainstream humanitarian organizations and people like Cindy McCain, whose late husband John McCain was one of the most diehard Zionist supporters of Israel's entire project. She's interviewed on the Sunday talk shows and is confronted with, well, Hamas is stealing the aid, and she pushes back and says no. So when you've lost Cindy McCain, John McCain's widow, in your propaganda narrative, that it is propaganda. That it's a lie. So I think this is some sense that what we're witnessing is going to fulfill some of the greatest fears of people when this was first announced, that it is going to be a paltry amount of so-called aid, that people are going to have to risk their lives to go and get it, that they may be part of a program where they're trying to force them to leave permanently central and northern Gaza with the hopes that they can get some food, and that it's going to be viewed as an intelligence operation to snatch and kidnap Palestinians for a variety of reasons.